Yo, it's Elut. Welcome back to the Fire Emblem Mount Rushmore batch number 2. Once again, I've brought with me Mithril Zenith. Mithril, say hi.
Hello, everybody. This is Mithril Zenith, and let's talk about some units and whether they deserve to be recognized.
Yeah, I'm excited, as always. I feel like, and I said this to you off recording, that a lot of these choices I'm less defensive about, so I feel like having another perspective here is maybe more important than the first one, if that makes any sense. Like, I feel like I could maybe use some help in a few areas, so I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure how much I'll be able to add to some of these lists. It's kind of hard to argue with some of them, but we'll make it interesting.
Yeah, for sure. So you want to just start off with the Jagans, the classics?
Yeah, the classics. So you kind of have most of the bases covered of the OG Jagan. Really good, standout. He's pretty solid in like every game he's in. Um, Marcus FE6 definitely definitely a hard carry for some of those early maps.
Oh yeah.
Titania and Seth. Seth definitely one of the most defining units of Fire Emblem in general, and then Titania. Hard to argue with, showing you the power of uh, strong mounted units in Path of Radiance. I'm trying to think of any other Jagans that are like, okay, do we start talking about the other types of do you start talking about the other types of Jagans, I guess. The units that are technically Jagans but don't really fall into the Cavalier Paladin mold? Or do we talk about the Jagans that like are the Paladin or Great Knight and then kind of or do different things? Because like we could mention Frederick.
Yeah, Frederick was one that I was thinking about mentioning here too. I'll pull him up real fast. There he
Because
is.
Frederick is like we can talk about, all these Jagans being good. Frederick is like necessary to play Lunatic and Lunatic Plus.
Oh yeah.
There is, in my mind, no way of beating the first like 4 chapters without him, because you don't even have access to like DLC. You can't even cheat your way through
Yeah.
until chapter 4. You need him, and you need to use him well in order to, start powering up the rest of your units. So it's like he's definitely, of all Jagans, I think the most important, arguably.
I could see that. I remember when I played Awakening, because like I started FE9, then FE7, then FE10, and I got Awakening like when it came out. That was like the first Fire Emblem that came out when I was a fan. And I was still like pretty early stages of playing, I was still like, I loved Titania. And I remember overusing her a little bit in FE9. But then when I started to like read a little bit online, you had that old mentality of like, oh, don't give your Jagan too much experience. You'll ruin your other guys, that whole thing, the pitfall thing. And I tried Awakening Lunatic and I was like, dude, this is impossible. And then I looked up like forums and stuff, and everyone was like, dude, you gotta abuse Frederick. I'm like, what? Yeah. I gotta use the pre-promote, dude? Ew! But he was like the first Jagan that like truly earned my respect, like in every regard. So
Oh, definitely.
I think he absolutely deserves a discussion here.
I think it's only somewhat of a meme that oh, now my brain is spacing what the name of the comic is. Friedrich Emblem, the whole, the weapon triangle, and the weapon triangle loses to Frederick.
Oh.
You know the one. It's like
Yeah.
not Brawl in the Family, not it was one of like the Smash comics though.
Okay.
Or adjacent. My brain is just totally spacing on what it is called right now. Get in the comments.
Yeah, get in the comments.
But yeah, it's like, in terms of all these other Jagans, it's like, who do you knock down then? Because it's like, I think Frederick's definitely in contention. I'm trying to think of anyone else. Like, we could do an oddball pick from Thracia, but Thracia is a game with like debatable Jagans.
Yeah, Thracia's weird, and I love that game, but I didn't really feel like they encapsulated like what a Jagan is in most instances. Like being a weird sort of interpretation of that doesn't always win you a spot up here, I feel like. You have to be really notable. Avel is like kind of like the main Jagan, but as we said, like she's a plot point, not a unit in the last video.
Avel is definitely she is like strictly gameplay wise your Jagan for the first couple chapters, but unless you know that, she does not read as a Jagan.
Yeah. And then like we could talk about Dagdar, who I mean he's a little bit weird too, because like, you know, he leaves and comes back, you know, spoiler, but not really. So it's like he's kind of a Jagan, and then honestly to me Finn has almost sort of felt like a Jagan too, but he doesn't fall off. Like he just stays good. But him, Dagdar, and Avel are head and shoulders above everybody else that you start with. So he kind of feels like the third Jagan almost.
Mm-hmm.
But
no, totally get it. And so it's hard for that. And then it's like, okay, FE7 Marcus is basically just another flavor of some of the other Jagans we already have on here, of like Seth and Titania.
Yeah.
FE10, you can argue Soth, but I don't feel... You could also argue Toronio.
Yeah.
And it's just like...
Yeah, Toronio's a little weird just because of like his availability. Just in general, like his availability is very weird. The thing with FE7 Marcus is like you're kind of right that he is like another flavor of like the Titania or the Seth kind of thing. But the reason I felt like FE6 Marcus earned it more is because FE7 Marcus is a busted Jagan like these in an easy game, whereas FE6 Marcus is a very helpful unit in a harder game.
Yeah, it's... If we're talking about necessity level of Jagan, it's like Frederick is like S tier in terms of you need him to complete the game, but I think Marcus is not too far behind. Like you can do it without Marcus and FE6, but you're gonna be hating your life.
Yeah, it's not fun at all, because like Lance gets 2-shot, Roy gets 2-shot, Walt gets 2-shot, Alan like just barely gets 3-shot, I think. So, and like Boris is just Boris. So Marcus is like he's your savior. You know what I mean? It's like
yeah, and then without Marcus, it's like, okay, what, you're relying on Deke to be accurate with like an armor slayer? You're relying on the Hammer Bros to hit like 50% at best?
Yeah.
More like 30 something percent?
Yeah, more like 20 or 30 on the thrones. Yeesh.
Yeah, it's so he's definitely worthy of being up there. And I'd also say that, you know, the OG Jagan is definitely worthy as well, especially when we're considering Hard 5, FE11.
Oh yeah.
It's like, yeah, sure, Sita, you know, one rounds things with the wing spear, but you have a couple chapters where she doesn't.
Yeah, exactly.
Not that Jagan hard carries those chapters anyway, but it's like he definitely helps.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, isn't like the standard like first turn move to just gun Jagan up forward to the first fort in chapter 1 while everybody else kind of stays behind? Because like he's the only one that can really do it. Isn't that like the basic play?
Can be. I think it's definitely one of the plays of all time.
Yeah. Okay. Because as I've said, I'm not as well versed in like the harder difficulties of Shadow Dragon as of yet. I have more experience with New Mystery, oddly enough, and he's not in that game, unfortunately. We have Aaron, but
yeah, I've played it a grand total of once, so I don't feel super like confident in my, you know, ratings of all of this, but definitely he is an important unit to say the least.
Okay. So I almost feel like these two are pretty set. I kind of feel like Frederick should be up here.
Yeah, and as much as it hurts me, it's like I love Titania.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too.
It's like she's a great unit, and she can last the whole game long, but it also is like you get a lot of other really competent cavaliers that can really easily turn into really competent paladins. And by the end of the game, it's like they're all doing stuff, and it's less of. And also, it's an easy enough game. It's like, yeah, we can talk about, Seth is an easy game, but Seth transforms the game into being so much easier. Titania helps with some objectives, definitely, and early on is really good, but she doesn't necessarily transform the entire game.
Right. Yeah, I think, and I love Titania too, but I feel like Seth just is FE8. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But Titania is not FE9 in the same sense. Like, as I said in the other video, she does get eclipsed by several units, like, notably hard about midway through the game. Whereas that does not happen with Seth. There's no replacement for Marcus or Frederick in the early game of FE6 Hard or Awakening Lunatic. Titania obviously one-rounds things, but, like, the enemy quality is very low already, and it's worth it to train, like, your Oscars and your Kirans and, your Flyers, the crazy Flyers in FE9. So, I don't know, I kind of like this 4, to be honest.
Yeah, and I don't think that Vander or Gunther or whatever are really worth it. Yeah, no, the stat backpack that leaves you.
Yeah, he literally falls off. Jeez.
Falls off the cliff. Pushed off by Hans. Yeah. Chapter 2.
A quick question for you about Titania. Do you think she is slightly overrated in FE9? Like I kind of think.
It depends on who you're talking to. I think that when people say that she's like, top 10 or top 15, whatever units in all of Fire Emblem, I think that definitely is overrated.
Right, I agree.
I think in FE9, she's definitely a high tier. I don't necessarily know if she's the best unit in that game, though.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I think she's a little bit overrated. She's still definitely a very good unit. But
oh, for sure.
I do think she is a little bit overrated because she does, air quote, fall off, kind of mid to late game in terms of she goes from easily being fine to her durability actually starts suffering after, halfway through the game.
Yeah, it's a little bit of durability and then just the strength. Like, you give her, like, forged weapons and she still, like, can struggle to one-round things. Like, I would put her in the same rough ranking with, like, Oscar and Kieran kind of thing. It depends. Like, you could argue that one way or the other. But I think for sure Marcia and, to a lesser extent, Jill, and you could even maybe argue Rayson are all better than Titania for, like, the grand scheme of FE9. So, like, it's weird for me to see, like, oh, Titania, best unit in the game. It's like, I just don't agree. That feels a little bit embellished to me. I don't know.
Yeah, no, but it's similar, yeah. So I think that, taking her off the list is sad, but has to be done.
Yeah. It's all good, though. We still love her.
All
right, so anything to change with the staff goats? I want to hear your takes on these, because I know you've only played Thracia once, but obviously you're a well-informed individual. You know how centralizing staffs are in that game, so I want to hear your thoughts.
So my thoughts are, it's like Safi and Tina are like the two halves of the mystery of Thracia. Because you have Tina, who has the overpowered personal staves in terms of like the Thief Staff and the Unlock Staff. Thief Staff in particular, if you power up her magic, she can steal any problematic item from any unit. It's like, oh, you don't want... I think there's a couple that are locked. I don't fully remember, but it's like
weapons that you can't steal?
Yeah, it's like, do they have to not be equipped? Was it? Or,
no.
Or
so
is that not even a thing?
No, they can be
steal,
equipped.
Like, Reinhardt's Dire Thunder, for instance.
Well, the thing with... Yeah, so how it works in Thracia is you have to have higher magic, and obviously you have to hit. So if you have 10 skill, you will hit for sure every time. The only sort of barrier is that. So, like, the only weapon I believe that you can't steal is the Loptirian Fang that Raedric has, because it gives him, like, a ridiculous magic boost when he equips it. which is
Yeah,
problematic.
it makes it so it's over 27,
Yeah.
which is the most magic you can have with 20 magic plus a M up staff.
Yeah. So, like, what people have done, the real Thracia Giga Chat gamers, what they do
Yeah.
is they give him like a bow or something, and then they make him attack at 2 range with the bow, so he unequips the sword, loses the magic bonus, and then you can thief staff it. If that
Okay.
makes sense.
No,
But
yeah,
everything else is fair game, pretty much.
Okay. Yeah, so it's Tina definitely, with all the shenanigans she can pull, she really is the first unit, if you haven't used a lot of staffers in Fire Emblem, to show you, it's like, here's what staves can be capable of, like, just to the wall. Like, what's the craziest thing you can think of? Tina has a staff that can do it. And then Safi is kind of like old reliable in that instance of like, well,
Yeah.
she's not as crazy, but she has the Hammer'n staff. She has access to all the other staves really easily. She works well with Tina with like, okay, she holds a magic up staff or ensorcel or whatever it's called now. And then powers up Tina so Tina can then hit whatever she needs to. I think those two definitely like hard to pick one or the other, so I think both. Sarah is the one that's like a little bit harder to justify. Just because like she comes so late, she doesn't really have anything unique going for her. She has the Dia staff or Kia or whatever.
Yeah, the Kia staff.
But it's not. I don't know. Sarah doesn't necessarily speak to me as like staff wielder per se, as much as like just all around effective, like Paragon mage.
That makes sense. The thing with Sarah, for me, besides just the fun factor of it, is that, like I said in the previous video, she is like the fail-safe. Whereas like the game very easily gives you Safi, and Tina is like the sort of like opposite of Safi. It's like the chaotic Safi with like different utility and stuff. And if anything happens through like the first half, 2/3 of Thracia, it's so easy to catch Sarah up. And like she's absolutely like worth having on your team, even if you already have like 3 or 4 staffers, because of how powerful it is in that game. Like I remember the first playthrough of Thracia I did, the hardest chapter for me was the final chapter, simply because I didn't train like nearly as many staffers as I thought I would need. So I had to brute force a lot of it. And then once I like trained more throughout the game, and I realized, wow, Sarah is like so easy to just have on the team with all these other people. It's very easy to like ensorcel her, and then like have her sleep people in like the final chapter, like the bosses. She has like movement stars and things. So she's like, I don't know, she's kind of like the middle ground of these two, almost, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that does.
But I just really like her. I just think she's really, really fun as a unit. So broken for like very little investment, which I think is just really funny.
Yeah. And then you have Silk, which is like, I'm not going to hate on Silk. I think that she's a perfectly fine unit. I think that she sometimes gets a little bit more credit than she deserves. In terms of like, even in FE2, like it's like, yeah, infinite range warp is nice, but when every map's a route map, how much are you really doing with that warp? It's like there are a couple times when it's like there are like 3 maps that aren't route. There's the Sluice Gate, the final chapter, and Rudolph. Sluice Gate isn't route because you need to kill the boss to, or it might be route, but if you kill the boss, then Delphia leaves if it is route. Otherwise, you kill the boss. And,
okay, that's the Delphia map. I had trouble remembering that.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay.
Rudolph, if you defeat Rudolph, the map ends, and then, of course, obviously, you kill Duma, the game ends.
Right, of course. Okay.
So, it's like, of those maps, it's like the Sluice Gate is by far the most important that Warp gets. I think outside of that, it's helpful for some other things, like you can warp Alm into some really helpful places. I think that she's definitely worth considering here for, the utility of having warp on potentially every map. I see what you're doing. I see you grabbing Lena. And here's my issue with Lena that I was about to bring up of like, hey, who else do we suggest? Here's my issue with Lena. Warp is not her personal staff. People treat her
True.
like she's like a personal staff warper, and it's like, I get it. Having multiple warpers is good, and she's a great second warper. But in my experience, I feel like Wendell, who you get one chapter later, is a more effective warper because if you don't happen to want to warp, he's already pre-promoted and he can, go crazy with spells. Or in FE11, he can reclass and become a Draco Knight with enough speed to, with high speed. And so it's like, I feel like Lena sometimes gets a bit too much credit from the community. Not saying she doesn't deserve any, but I think she gets too much for what she does.
That's very
because
interesting.
Hamern, you only have Hamern for 3 chapters. Okay. 4 chapters, technically, because you get it on Camus' map, and then you have the 2 Macedon maps, and then it's the Garnef map, the Dragon map, and the final. So, technically 5 chapters of Hamern available, but of those, it's like 3 realistically, and all 5 of those maps, you already have the Star Sphere available, unless you turn it into the Starlight. And so, it's like, yeah, you get to save some of your weapons, which, in terms of FE11, saving the forges that you spent, 200,000 gold on is important.
Yeah, for sure.
But you can also save those by using the Star Sphere, and I get it, the Star Sphere can't be everywhere at once. Hamern is useful, I'm not saying it's not, but I think that people give her too much credit for various things. Maybe I'm just a Lena hater. Maybe I should be looking around my corner for Danny.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say, look over your shoulder.
But I'm trying to think of some other staff wielders that might kind of take that credit. I don't think Wendell deserves to be up here for the record. For this sake, but I think important to bring him up because if you're just giving her credit for Warp, you should give Wendell credit for Warp too because he's in as many warpable chapters as Lena is.
Okay, so the thing with it's not her personal weapon. There's 2 sides to that because Warp isn't Safi's personal weapon either. But the thing with Safi is she's literally the only unit that will probably be able to use it for a good chunk of the game, and even after that she'll still probably be using it. But these 2, and to a lesser extent Sarah, all have also personal stabs. She doesn't have that, so I do understand that sort of argument for it. The only thing with the Lena versus Wendell thing is I feel like maybe people give Lena the warp credit simply because, and maybe I'm wrong, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this.
Her inventory?
No, not that, but it's just that we know that Wendell can do other things in Shadow Dragon specifically. So it's we can make him a Draco Knight, and he's actually quite good at it, even on 0%. Lena can't do that. So if we need Wendell to do something else, she's kind of the de facto warper, if that makes sense. So maybe that's why she gets more of the credit.
Could be.
But yeah, we'll take Wendell down. But...
Are there any other warpers that you think are not warpers?
Warpers.
Sorry, just warpers now. This is just what the list is now. Any other staff wielders that you speak out to you? It's we could talk if you wanted to about Hortensia. We could talk about Mulder. We could talk about Saul.
The one...
Do you think any of those are kind of worth discussing?
I wouldn't say Saul. Saul has the better staff rank, but someone like Clarine has the better availability. It's I don't know. Because here's the thing, between these 2 is staff rank is a big deal in FE6. I'm not saying that it's not. But by the time you actually get the warp staff, if you're using one of these, they will have the staff rank to use it. You know what I mean? It's not like you get the warp in Chapter 7 and Clarine has 3 ranks to go up to be able to use it. That just doesn't happen if you're consistently deploying her. So I don't feel like there's a huge edge that either one of these has over each other in that regard. Because she has the movement and all that stuff too. So... if we're going to talk about an FE6 staffer, I would want to talk about Nime, right here, or possibly, and this might be a weird one, Cecilia, but that might be stretching it a little bit. Because the thing with Cecilia is like very few units in FE6, again, like the whole staff rank problem, come with like C rank or higher, and you'd expect Cecilia to be better when you get her, but at the same time, having restore at base is so huge in that game, and like she's like an insta deploy for a good chunk of the mid game until you get people like Nime that just kind of do it all.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I don't think she'll end up being up here, but you know, I wanted to mention her. I like her quite a bit as a unit. And then Nime, I don't think I have to say too much more about Nime. She does it all as soon as you get her. But at the same time, she doesn't join for over 2/3 of the game. So is she really on par with all of these? I kind of don't think so. You know what I mean? So I don't know.
Yeah. It is definitely, one of those, like, I'm not sure that any of those really outweigh anything. I'm trying to think if there's any other from any other games. The only other thing I can think of is, do you want to talk about, like, the Butlers and Fate?
We can, although I don't have a ton of personal experience to go off of.
Fair. And we're talking about me, who historically gets everything wrong about Fates with like Merciless and whatnot. So I don't feel qualified enough to talk about it. Like, they're definitely important units.
Yeah.
But and there are people who make really good arguments on why giving them an early Heart Seal to reclass them is a bad thing.
Oh.
But it's also there are arguments on both sides of like whether or not they're worth your Heart Seal in terms of how much they provide versus Heart Sealing someone else. Like if you have a really good Corrin swap, or making someone else like Elise into a Wyvern, I've seen just have an extra flyer for supports and stuff. I obviously don't know enough about the game to make a great call on that.
Right. I think with Jacob, like, I think Jacob is the one I've seen more about, you know, the whole Paladin Jacob thing for like chapter 10 and things. But at the same time, like, does that put him in staff goats? No. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I don't know. I don't have the experience. Like, I just started replaying Conquest recently, and I haven't touched it in like a month. So I don't know. I don't know if they go up here. We can talk about Hortensia briefly if you'd like to. I don't think she is nearly as centralizing as any of these, but she has an interesting sort of role, I guess, in Engage.
Yeah, Hortensia is one of those weird units where it's like she's considered to be one of the best units in the game because she's basically, let's be honest, one of the only units to have anything truly unique about them in Engage. And that's big personality and World Tree.
Yeah. Okay.
And so she has extra range on the vast majority of her staves. Not all, but it's not as limited as the game wants you to believe, because it is on more than just healing staves, is that certain utility staves also have benefits on them.
Oh, okay. I gotcha.
Benefit from big personality. Sorry. I'm being very unclear with what I'm trying to say.
It's all good. Yeah, I mean, I liked Hortensia when I used her and everything, but I don't know. I feel like a lot of times, like, the unit analysis and discussion in Engage gets like too deep sometimes with like little things. Like, I understand, like, people want to optimize and like pick at every little thing, and that's fun, but at the same time, like, do I think Hortensia is head and shoulders above everybody else because her utility is like the greatest thing since Safi? Hell no. You know what I mean? So, I don't know.
Yeah. Maybe
that's just me.
It's one of those things of, like, I don't think it's horribly off base to put Hortensia, like, in consideration here, but I also don't feel strongly enough to give her the spot, like, out of mind.
Right.
Maybe get in the comments and, you know,
yeah.
convince us otherwise. Let us know why you think Hortensia is, like, the best unit of all time. I still think, like I said, she's one of the only units engaged that has anything unique going for her, but
Yeah,
is
truly
that
unique.
really a
Yeah.
great is that really a great sign? Is that really a high bar to pass?
Yeah, yeah. No, that's true. That's true. Um,
Um, outside of that, then I guess we could give Lena credit for all the wonderful things you can do with warp and whatnot in FE1, because I still am of the opinion that like she kind of deserves it a little bit more than Sarah, just for the sake of Sarah comes pretty late, and it's like, yes, she does important stuff. I'm not saying that she can't or doesn't, but it's one of those things of I feel like she's relatively less important, not unimportant, but relatively less important, because of Safi and Tina and kind of all the work that they've already done. It's like she's still really good, but you know that staves are good by the time you get her
yeah, for sure.
because of Safi and Tina.
Yeah, I feel like Sarah is almost like she's almost like a Nime in a way, but more centralizing in a sense. Whereas like all of these are like, I mean, even Tina has like pretty good availability. Like Chapter 12X is still like the first half of the game, and no one can do the things that Tina does. Sarah has a single interaction that only she can do, and it's optional. Like you don't have to do it. I'm not going to spoil what it is with the Kia staff and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, it is a personal staff, and it is technically important, but it's end game stuff that is also, like I said, technically optional. Like we said, so. And while I don't give Lena credit for every warp in the game, like some people tend to, I think that she is notable enough as a warp out of the box that is going to be used as such to merit a position here.
Yeah.
Also because we've talked around in circles for like half an hour about this.
Yeah, no. I'm happy with this list, I think. I figured Lena would get a spot here. I was going to fight these two pretty hard. I understand Sarah going down, even though she is one of my favorites.
Yeah, and then as for Silk, again, while I think that Warp is less important than people give it credit for, I think that she still is such a notable unit for a variety of things she can do between Warp, Nosferatu, being your only healer for a very long time on Alm's route, which is a very sluggy route in terms of you're going to be trading blows a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
You can argue whether Jenny's more important because she allows your mages to still cast their spells, but I think Silk is fine.
Okay. All right, I'm down for that. So I guess we move on to the Armor Knights. I have a feeling Oswin will stay. I think he's just kind of a classic. But we can talk more about all of them. So take it away.
So Oswin's the classic good armor.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you get him, he's really solid. He doesn't really, like, fall off, air quotes. It's like, I'm talking about these like he's a Jagan. He's just a really solid armor knight. You can use him for as much as you want. Sure, FE7's not a super hard game, but Oswin is one of your early units who's higher level, not necessarily a pre-promote, but has that higher level, has that really bulky defense stat, and just kind of does what you need him to, where a lot of other armor units can do that for a bit, but don't often keep up, shall we say, or other units match them pretty quickly in the defensive category.
Right.
Like, I love
usually
Gilliam.
The paladins.
Yeah, it's like, I love Gilliam, but I'd be lying if I said that, you know, a couple levels and a promotion on Kyle doesn't match his defense. You know?
Right, of course. I do, kind of like I said in the other video, like, Oswin just feels right. He just feels like he belongs there. And it doesn't feel like, most of the time, at least in my opinion, in FE7, that, like, his main weakness being movement is, like, a super big hindrance. Because a lot of FE7 maps are either on, like, the smaller side, or they're, like, route maps with, like, high enemy density. He has 1 to 2 range. He has good base stats. Does he start at level 10?
I don't remember exactly, but I think that sounds right.
Okay. But he's just like, cause you get, I don't know the chapters super well. They're hard to remember, like the numbers. But the route map where, Hector and Elut meet up the first time, your real, like, good units there are Hector, Oswin, Marcus, and, like, kind of Lowen. And, like, Oswin is, like, absolutely a huge help there, like, up at the top with Hector until, like, Marcus can, like, reach them or everybody converges. And even past that, he's, like, really solid, I feel like, for a good chunk of the game. So
Definitely.
All right, Gatry, I know you have some stuff to say about Gatry. I'm very interested. We had to stop ourselves before the recording.
A little bit.
Yeah.
So I was talking about how many Armor Knights are just memes.
Yeah, like most of them. 95%.
And while I feel like Gatry is more than just a meme, that really comes into play in FE10, where he comes in, he's already a general, and he's pretty fast for an Armor Knight. And he ends up being, if you can get him into position, which is not super hard because of the higher movement of all of all Tellius units, aside from mages.
Yeah. Yikes.
That he's exactly. It's actually not too hard to kind of get him in position, and I've noticed he ends up becoming one of the most solid, underrated units in the Grail Mercs, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree.
Like, I think a lot of people don't give him credit just because, oh, he's an Armor Knight, obviously he's bad. It's like, really? Though, I will say, FE9 does not do him any favors.
Yeah.
Comes in, and he's not, like, bad, but where I cut myself off, Gatry is not the tanky unit for the early chapters of that duo of Gatry and Shinon. It's Shinon who's the tanky unit.
It's true.
Shinon has 40 HP, he has like 10 defense or something, he has Provoke, he doesn't have a hammer weakness.
He dodges. He doesn't get doubled.
He dodges as well, and then he crits and steals your kills.
Yeah.
So Shinon just kind of does, and also he doesn't, counterattack on enemy phase, and so he blocks points very effectively. Yeah. And so it's like Shinon is the more tanky defender, if you will, of this duo, even though Gatry doesn't do a bad job of it.
Yeah. I think the funny thing with FE9 Gatry is, like, he does make a good first impression, I think. Especially, I think of chapters like Chapter 7. I think everyone really appreciates Gatry, Shinin, Shinon, please roast me for saying his name weird, and Titania really, really control Chapter 7. And then everybody else is just kind of chipping everyone down for kills. Because no one's really one-rounding quite yet.
The early game of Path of Radiance is definitely the training arc of, like, everyone but Titania.
Yeah, pretty much. And, like, he's nice and he's helpful for that, and then he leaves. And when he comes back, he gets doubled into oblivion by everything. He has, like, 5 speed, maybe? Or it might be lower than that. It might be, like, 3 or 4. And that's really bad for Chapter 13 of the game.
Yeah, it's not good. And it's not like the Night Ward is his personal thing either, because you can give that to any of your Cavaliers.
Yeah, just make them even more broken than they already are. Mm-hmm. So it's like
30% speed growth, 2/2 defenses, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, yeah, you can train him if you want. As we've said a billion times, FE9 is an easy game, but I've done it before. I've trained every unit in FE9 several times, and a lot of times Armor Knights are like the funny character. I think of people like Wendy. They're the funny one. They're bad, and that's why you use them, because it's funny. Gatry isn't funny in FE9, like, in terms of gameplay. It just kind of feels bad.
Yeah, it's like Braum and Nephany, I think, are funnier than Gatry.
Oh, definitely. They're definitely funnier than Gatry.
Yeah, so it's like, it's kind of weird then. And then you have Arden.
Arden.
Bless his soul, Arden. He's definitely the most overt comic relief Armor Knight. It's like, Gatry has his moments, but, like, Arden, man.
Dude, Arden.
really shows you what 5 move can do in Genealogy of the Holy War.
Yeah, no, he's by far the biggest meme in the Armor Knight category, like by
I
far.
mean, he's holding his own in my Iron Man so far.
Hey, let's go.
Not necessarily saying much.
Yeah, I just think it's hilarious that like the game itself and a lot of the dialogue memes on Arden like very openly, which doesn't normally happen with characters in general. So I think that's kind of special. He is iconic in FE4 for a lot of things. He has his special events. He's very, very funny.
Yeah. And then you have Louis, who I think is kind of, the community is give and take on him.
Yeah.
When the game came out, everyone loved Louis. And now everyone's like kind of turning on him, kind of hating on him.
Really?
Being like, Louis your real Jagan, you know? And I'm like, well, yeah, that's because, maddening, damage numbers scale up really high. And it's kind of hard to keep him fed with enough experience to make it so he can scale up to match.
Yeah, I'm sure it's much harder to just have him one shot, because I doubt he's going to be doubling, right?
Yeah. And he will never double anything aside from maybe other Armor Knights if you don't give him a smash weapon.
Yeah.
I still think that he does his job really well for, even if just the first half of the game, he does it so well. Like, I played the game and legitimately thought, wow, they made Armor Knights good again.
Yeah. Yeah, no, he definitely made a good first impression on me, too.
And I think the only other 2 Armor Knights that I have in consideration in my mind is, first of all, Drog, which we'll get to why I don't necessarily think he's on the list, far right. And second of all, Effie.
Oh, Effie, okay. I forgot about her.
Yeah, so...
I have to... oh, here she is. Okay.
Conquest units. So, Drog is a meme, but not because the game wants to make him a meme. He's not a meme like Arden or Gatry is a meme.
Yeah.
Drog is a meme because the community makes him a meme, because not enough Fire Emblem on the forums made the Doga will choke this point meme. And he's also a meme because he has, if I remember right, a negative defense base or something. Because in order for him to have the defense base that he does, he actually needs his personal defense base to be really low and his personal speed base to be really high to get counteracted by the Armor Knight class bases in Shadow Dragon, which is a weird thing. And so the way that you use Drog is that you make him, I think it's either a Dark Mage or a Pirate. It's either a Dark Mage to kind of like, hey, he has some pretty good base speed to do that with, or a Pirate to kind of capitalize on that speed again. And then he can, start doubling other units. Or in like FE12, I think if you reclass him right, he doesn't get doubled.
Yeah, I seem to recall like a common option, and I might be wrong, but I seem to recall a common option for FE12 was making him a Cavalier. That was like the go-to. Yeah,
once you unlock the full male class set for everyone, then you can make him a Cavalier. Because if you don't, then the best option for speed is Pirate. But I think, yeah, as a Cavalier, he has really good speed and surprisingly low defense.
Yeah.
It's the whole thing of like, Doga's not strong because of his armor, Doga's strong because of Doga. No, it's the opposite way around. He's only defensive because of his armor. He actually has really bad defense, growths and everything. So he's a meme of the community. He kind of does his job, but all things considered, outside of reclassing in 11 and 12, he's not really a great unit.
Yeah, no, I remember, like, because, again, I'm not the most experienced with Shadow Dragon specifically, but I've watched, like, all of Don 151's playthroughs. Mm-hmm. I love those videos so much.
So much.
And his Shadow Dragon playthrough was eye-opening for me, because it's like, okay, yeah, he's, like, kind of mid Chapter 1, but it's whatever. He can, like, maybe do 1 or 2 things. And then Chapter 2, he's getting one-rounded. It's just like, it's over. It's already done. Like, that's so funny to me. So
yeah, the higher difficulties are not kind to Armor Knights for the most part. Though I will say, every once in a while you get an exception. And in my personal experience, I don't know if anyone else has had this experience, but in my personal experience, Effie is one of those exceptions. In
Yeah.
terms of she has 3 things, and in Conquest, that's all she needs. She has hit points, strength, and defense.
Yeah. You know, so I'm chapter 9, I believe, on my Conquest Lunatic like replay. And she absolutely made a good impression on me. I don't know how she favors like for the rest of the game, but she definitely stood out to me. I mean, just like backpack Arthur with her, and like that's a whole choke that you've blocked off like pretty easily, especially with like the pair up bonuses and like the blocking and stuff. So
Yeah.
you know, maybe you can fill me in on like how she does for the rest of the game, but that alone is like noteworthy for sure.
Yeah, so Effie, in my experience, is one of the few units in Fates that not few units, but one of the units that really kind of plays herself out, doesn't need a lot of fancy reclassing. I'm sure you can do some to make her even better, but she kind of has her kit from minute 1, and all she needs to complete it is to promote to General and get, was it not Steady Stance, but,
Is it the indoor thing? Indoors? Class
not
skill?
indoor, but the one that prevents doubling.
Oh, I don't know what that's called, but I know what you're talking about now.
Yeah, I forget. It's not Steady Stance. Not like I'm forgetting. I'm blending it with Heroes.
I'll look it up and put it in the video
it's
we
a
don't
skill
remember.
that's in Heroes as well, but it's the skill that prevents doubling.
Okay.
And as a unit with very low base speed, that is very good for a unit who's supposed to be a wall.
Yeah. No, that's insane. Actually, that's a skill. What?
Yeah, no, it's a skill given to generals. Is it their level 5 or their level 15? Now I have to look this up. Wary fighter.
Oh, okay.
General level 5 gets wary fighter. Neither user nor enemy can perform follow-up attacks. And for Effie, this is great because she doesn't double most things anyway. And is always at least on the edge of getting doubled. But what Effie does have, like I said, hit point, strength, and defense. Like, reasonable skill and whatnot, too, to actually be somewhat accurate with attacks.
Yeah.
But hit points is notable because in Fates, very few units actually have solid hit point growths. You may have noticed this in your Birthright playthrough, but you're probably going to notice a lot more in Conquest, where a lot of your units, promoted are like in the 30s of HP.
Yeah, that is kind of low.
Effie's one of the few units that can easily get into the 40s and beyond. A lot of units in Fates will be like 30s to 40s. Like, even pre-promotes, like Camilla, I think, starts at high 20s, like 28, I want to say, is like her base HP.
Yeah, it's not as high as you'd think it would be.
It's very much reminiscent of, like, classic Minerva, like old school, Fire Emblem 11 stats in some of those ways.
Right.
In terms of hit points. Not anything else, but in terms of hit points.
Yeah, okay.
The HP is definitely scaled down. And so having a unit that just has hit point bulk, if nothing else, is really important. Then she has the defense on top of that to soak blows. She has really good strength to make the hits she makes count. And that also makes her really good if she's not in a dual guard position for the dual strikes, because her really high strength makes that one attack for the dual guard, which is done at half might, pretty powerful, especially with a strong enough lance.
Yeah.
I think there's one weapon that's like, I don't think it's one of the joke weapons, but it's one of the like one-off weird side grade weapons that I think has like minus a lot to speed, but has really high power. I don't have the best grasp of Fates in general, but there are things you can do with Effie that really make use of. She's a unit that does what it says on the tin, and in a game like Fates where a lot of units don't,
yeah,
that is very reassuring and that is very nice. And she's just so easy to use, and the fact that an Armor Knight of all things ends up being one of the units that feels easiest to use is really noteworthy in my opinion.
All right, you've convinced me for sure. And like
Yeah, so I
exactly
guess-
as advertised. That's nice. That's not usually the case with these guys.
Yeah, so I guess that's the question of where do we leave it? It's like, first of all, do
I
we
think these two stay. I'll say that. I think these two stay.
we leave Arden for what what Armonite memes exist? We leave Oswin for like the platonic ideal of an Armonite, I guess.
Yeah.
And then we can have Iffy, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
I'm less certain about Drog, to be honest, just because he kind of like he's the armor knight that exists. Like he's definitely the token armor knight.
Okay.
He exists. He does his thing a little bit, and then you kind of leave him by the wayside. FE1 his showing is not good. FE3 it's a little better because dismounting exists, and so he's the only unit that can use lances indoors, which is, I guess, notable. I think they took Roger out of FE3, which is sad.
Oh, did they really?
I don't remember if they took him out of FE3, or if it's just that he doesn't exist in Book 2. It's one of those two, because I remember that in Book 2, only Drog and Sheena are the two units who can use Gradavis in the final maps because they're indoor maps.
Oh wow. Okay, that's interesting. Because I know Roger's in FE12 for sure, but
Yeah, it's not enough to make them good, but it is interesting,
yeah,
I guess.
it is interesting. That is very interesting.
It's kind of like people who say, yeah, Ilyana can get Rex Bolt in Radiant Dawn. It's like, yeah, it's
She
a 12 night,
could.
14 weight tome. It's not enough to make her good, but it is notable, I guess.
She
It is a
can.
fact that she's the only one who can use it, theoretically.
Yeah, she can, but doesn't mean that you should.
So I guess the question is, Gatry, Louis, or Drog? And I kind of am leaning more towards Louis in terms of units that I like using, units that I think are useful. Like,
Okay.
you know, not to talk down on my boy Gatry, but it's like the things that he does in Radiant Dawn I don't necessarily process as Armor Knight things. And Path of Radiance is not a game where Armor Knights are really that useful.
No, no. I think the funny thing with Gatry and FE10 is just that, like, you expect, like, all right, Armor Knight, slow, LOL. But then you compare him with Soren, and it's like, oh, he's just faster than Soren. That's hilarious. That's what I think of anyway.
The first stat that my Gatry always caps is speed.
Yeah, no, I mean, the old joke of he swallowed the Night Ward between FE9 and 10 and has a speed growth all of a sudden. You know?
Yeah, no, good unit. Great choice to early promote into Marshall in a weird way. But yeah, I think that's my 4.
Okay. Me personally, I'm down for these 3. I could go between either of these 2. I'm not super big on Draug, but that also is a lack of experience. So, you know, Gatry, buddy,
give and take.
I love you, but I think we leave Louis Gerd up there.
Yeah, we can put him up here, even if people are gonna, oh, he falls off, he's not actually that good. It's like, he's very good for at least a couple chapters.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I definitely, like I said, like, I will appreciate what he does in, like, the early game, at the very least, like, forever. But I do still hold the opinion that, like, if you want someone to stay relevant and engage, it's not that hard to do, you know?
Yeah.
But I like those 4. I'm glad we changed a few of them, because this is by far, like, my weakest category personally. Because I generally don't use Armor Knights. So...
Well, speaking of units that are generally more useful,
yeah. Yeah, I feel like I covered the bases rather well, if I do say so myself. But I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah, overall, pretty good. A couple of potentials that I want to discuss and add on, because I think that we discussed, the other 4 pretty well. You did in your other video. A couple suggestions that I want to talk about. Let's bring up either Ninian or Nils.
Okay.
Because I want to talk about the efficacy of Dancer Rings. and
yeah,
what
yeah.
those do.
I completely forgot about that. So yeah, go off.
Fina, you could bring up Fina for FE3, but I also kind of want to bring up the prototype of dancers, and that's Zane.
Oh yeah, Zane. I wasn't
'Cause
sure
he's
if I was
not
gonna
a true
count
dancer.
Zane,
He's
but
not a true
he's
dancer, but he does similar things if you look at him sideways.
yeah. No, Zane's an interesting sort of entry. I wasn't sure if I should include him or not, but I think
Yeah.
he's very interesting to talk about at the very least.
And then the question is, do we include Azura on the list as well, just for being a far more available unit as a dancer?
That's fair.
Especially in terms of, like, in Revelation, she's one of the only 2 units you really have.
Oh yeah, no, that is true. I have played Revelation once. It was not fun, but Azura was there. Now, I basically put Olivia up here because it's like the pair-up dance sort of mechanic, generally speaking, is the same. I just like Olivia's character. I don't really care about Azura's character, so that was like where the personal bias comes in. But I could very easily see the argument of like Azura's more useful in like specifically things like Conquest or Rev over Awakening, but maybe that's not true. You know, maybe it is. I'm not sure.
It's weird because neither of these games are games that I personally have a lot of experience in. I've played through Awakening 2.5 times, once on hard, 1.5 times on Lunatic. And I've played through every route of Fates at least once. I got bored and stopped my Revelations replay, and I technically got to the end but never finished my Conquest replay, because that final chapter, if you don't have everything prepared, is a nightmare. And it's like, okay, Azura definitely sees use on every chapter, but it's like, at this point, it's kind of like just an auto-include, and I don't even really think about what Azura brings to the table.
Okay.
Because she joins so early. Meanwhile, it's like all these other dancers, they join, or in Lara's case, become a dancer kind of late. Like, Olivia's fairly early for a dancer, but they join late enough that it's like, okay, you have to really consider what this dancer is giving your team. And then, I guess, outside of like Layla / insert FE4 dancer, because FE4 has no deployment limit. It's just a matter of, can you get the unit to where they're important.
Right.
And then it's like Fina, yeah, she exists as the first dancer. Not bad either. Zane is more interesting as a concept unit, but I think is kind of one of those like failed mechanic type failed units of like, he either becomes really good or is like just doesn't really feel great to use, I guess, in a weird way.
Yeah.
And then Ninian is, I don't know, you want to talk about how rings break the game?
Okay, so well, first, I do think Fina is like the weakest one here, personally. Are you cool if I just take that down?
Yeah,
like,
she's only here because she's the first dancer.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. But yeah, Ninian, I completely forgot about her, to be honest. That's just my FE7 hate club mentality coming in. But no, the it's plus 10 on the various bonuses, correct? Like defense or strength or whatever. If I remember right,
it's defense, strength, hit rate, and crit rate? Or it's like crit rate and dodge rate, I want to say.
Okay.
For the respective rings.
Yeah,
defense and strength are the only ones that are really important. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I know they're super broken, and I feel like I feel a little bit stupid, to be quite honest with you, that I didn't even think to mention her in the first video. I do also feel like Zane is so cool, but is he really better than just the dancer? Like, maybe that's a weird question, because like it's sort of the conundrum of like, would you rather have 2 strong units or a strong unit and a dancer? And I think generally speaking, the better option is the strong unit and the dancer, because at face value, what that means is, oh, you get the strong unit twice, but there are certain applications where one is better than the other. Specifically, like with movement, because if you have Pala in FE12, let's say, and you copy her with Zane, so you have 2 Palas, that's great. But if Pala has to move, 18 tiles in a single turn, neither her nor Zane can do that on their own. They would need Pala and a Dancer to do that, in the right scenario, if that makes sense. So, I don't know.
There's a couple other things that I think make Dancers better than Zane. One is that movement utility. 2 is Dancers help to actually train that other unit. 2, Zane just makes the experience go away.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think he's cool, but...
Inventory? Zane copies the unit, they does not copy the inventory. And in games, especially FE 11 and 12, where your forged weapons are the most important thing on your unit, you can pass it to Zane, but he doesn't copy the inventory, he doesn't have it with him all the time. And then 4 is the startup time, is that you have to use that entire turn just to transform. Which, even if you're not playing like LTC speed or anything, is really annoying to feel like, okay, I gotta use my turn, wait next to my unit, transform, I can't move my unit their full movement, or, they'll be out of range of Zane, or you have to, do something weird to do that, and it's just like, the cost of getting Zane up to speed and into a usable state, plus also in some of the games, he doesn't even copy their current HP, he just copies their max and is like super injured. Yeah,
no, that's what I was going to bring up too. It's like if he has 20 base HP, he copies someone with like 44, he is 20 out of 44 HP. So not only do you have to waste a turn with him to transform, but you have to use someone else to heal him for next turn, which takes away resources from somewhere else that you might need. And it's a cool idea, but I'd rather, if I had to pick one, I'd rather have the Dancer. Like, straight up. So...
Yeah, definitely. I think that, again, cool idea, but even in terms of Dancers go, there's a reason why we've kept the Dancer model and not the Zane model, not the Commando or Copycat model. So I guess beyond this, do we talk about, who are we swapping in, if anyone?
I could see an argument for Azura over Olivia. I think that would be fair, personally. I do kind of still believe that Lelia or FE4 Dancer, insert, whatever, deserves a spot simply for, like, that's the first, raw power 4-way dance. And then, like, the sort of offshoot of that is the Herons that have different versions of that. Rayson has the 1 dance untransformed, the 4 dance transformed. Raphael has the 4 dance all the time. Leanne has the 2-way, but has Kanto. So it's like, that's, like, Rayson is the sort of representation of all 3 of them. And especially, like I said in the previous video, like, in Radiant Dawn, more so than FE9, I feel like you just get more juice, you get more use out of the 4-way dance, generally speaking, than you do in FE4 in, like, a regular playthrough of the game. Because after those, like, first few turns in FE4, like, out of that first castle, the Dancer, like, does struggle to keep up. And I'm not a big fan of, like, the leg ring Dancer. I think that's so weird. It could be fun, if you're into that, but, like, I just give it to Seliph every time, straight up, or Sigurd. You know what I mean? So
yeah, it has its merit, but it's not necessarily the ideal decision at all times.
Yeah. I do also, I'm going to defend Lara a little bit, because, like, yeah, she doesn't become a Dancer till 12X, but before that, she has good availability. She joins in Chapter 4, and although she isn't, like, refreshing right away, she is useful anywhere you deploy her, because she is a thief, and yeah, she can't steal tomes at base like Lithis can, but she is an excellent capture bait target when that is extremely valuable. It's normally her and Karen that do that, because they are so light, and they're not really good at combat or anything else. So them being capture bait to weaken other enemies to set up kills for your other guys when you're kind of down bad for, like, really good combat units is, like, so valuable. And then when you get her to become a Dancer, not only is she just a dancer, and that's really good for utility, but with the power that Thracia gives the player so consistently with personal weapons and FCM and the plethora of staves that you get, like your power just grows exponentially with Laura. And on top of that, the one movement star dancing for herself 5% of the time. It's just it's crazy. It's just straight up crazy.
Yeah, she also has the meme of being the 80 level unit.
Yeah.
It is good in any respect, but for those of you not in the know, so she can promote into a rogue, from thief to rogue, using a master seal before becoming a dancer, which resets her level, and then if you master seal her after becoming a dancer, she becomes a rogue again, and so you can theoretically get 80 levels on her out of her.
Yeah.
You should not do this. It is not a good strategy. It takes way too much grinding, and you end up with just like the most random unit. I don't even know if her movement growth is like good at all, but it's like theoretically you could do it.
Yeah.
And someone's done it.
Oh, someone I'm sure has. Oh no. That sounds awful.
Leave a link in the comments if you have proof of a level 80 effective Laura.
Yeah.
Because I ain't doing that.
No, ain't no way, dude. Ain't no way. The funny thing about that is like she like that sounds so terrible too, because like Thracia stat caps besides HP are all at 20. And when she becomes a dancer, she loses like 5 in like her skill and speed and something else, I think. So it's like, not only is it so painful to actually get her stats, but then when she gets, the level 41, like back into dancer, she gets worse. So it's like, oh god, that sounds terrible.
Yeah, no, it is a miserable experience, but it is technically one of Thracia's memes. It is one of the memes of all time of Fire Emblem. And we're talking, Ninian for like, dancing, alternate dances, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
Technically, Racing has those too, just no one ever uses them. Because it's like, okay,
with the
you
healing?
have... Not the healing.
Oh, the biorhythm.
Radiant Dawn, at level 15, I want to say, you have a song that increases a unit's and allies biorhythm to max.
Mm-hmm.
At 25, I want to say, you have a song that decreases an enemy's biorhythm to minimum.
Yeah, that's evil.
35, 30 or 35, you have a song that maxes out the Laguz gauge.
I've never used that, I will say. I've never used that one. I've never gotten him nearly that high level, but...
It takes way too long, and by the time you can get it, you have Laguz gems.
Yeah, or just like 5 royals.
Yeah, so what are you doing? I've used it once for the memes, just because I thought it would be fun, and I used it, and I was like, oh, that was fun. Now back to using Kanto again. back to using Go Again. So it's like, okay. And I think it's like, for Ninian, I know the rings exist and can do a lot of cool stuff with them, but FE7 is a game where it's like, I only am using the rings to either cheese the arena or cheese the dragon.
Yeah, I figured it was mainly like for the dragon thing at the end. Aren't there like certain spots where she uses the defensive one as like bolting bait or something, or purge bait?
Yeah, so you can either use that for like to bait out to bait out against Ursula, to whoever you're putting in Ursula's range, so they don't die.
Okay.
Though you most likely have her on the other side to help rescue Dance in order to rescue Jafar by turn 4 instead of turn 3 or 4 instead of
right. Okay, so we are back. My hard drive is dying. So Mithril got cut off. We were talking about Ninian, and you stopped when you were talking about you use the strength boost to give bonus to whoever doubles the dragon.
Yeah, so the defense is helpful for like some arena stuff. You can do some arena abuse stuff with that, and the strength bonus really is only notable for like you use it to help power down the dragon if you're not already just doing a Lunacrit cheese. Um, and then aside from that, there's no really other great places for them. And so I like the idea of the rings, the dancing rings, but I don't think that they're super useful. The vast majority of the time, I'd rather just use the unit again.
Right, okay. Do you think they'd be more useful in like a harder game? Like, do you think if she was in, let's say,
yeah.
Conquest, she would absolutely be up here, no questions asked?
A plus 10 to defense, a plus 10 to strength. Yeah.
Okay.
That level of buff, it is a very significant level of buff for a game that's harder, but I think that a game whose stat requirements are... Like, could you imagine... You recently played through FE12, right?
Yes.
Could you imagine having those rings in FE12?
Yeah, no, especially, like, because it goes over stat caps, I assume, right?
Yeah, it's added like a buff. It's just like you have the status. That's why rescuing and holding them keeps it. It's kind of like poison.
Yeah.
In fact, it also blocks poison, if I remember right, too, which is a fun like little niche thing. But yeah, it adds it as a status, and so it doesn't matter what your stats are. It just adds them over top during combat, which is also why it works in the arena, because you're not fighting enemies that adjust their stats up. They still treat you as if you have those lower stats. You just then have that plus 10.
Yeah, okay. Because a sort of similar thing in FE12 is the Rainbow Potion that gives plus 2 to all stats, but it does not go over stat caps. And in like the late game of FE12 Lunatic, like enemies have capped stats. So that level of buff over stat caps, I would kill for in that game. That would be actually insane. So,
yeah, so I think
fair.
it's more just the case of good unit, good potential, not the right game for it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we never really saw that level of stuff again. Did you catch, did we get on recording the stuff when I was talking about Racing?
Yes, we did.
The different Galder? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think that we can probably leave Nidian off of this list.
Okay.
And I wouldn't necessarily add into contention any of the others that we didn't talk about, like Tethys or Seedall, because they're just kind of like, they're dancers that are doing the same thing that other dancers have done.
Yeah, they're the more standard sort of implementation. I like this group of 4 quite a bit. So we finally got to the final category, which is the X Boys or Girls. This is a little bit loose, as I said. It doesn't have to be your early game fighter necessarily, but I am also kind of trying to keep away from like pre-promoted units that just have axes, if that makes sense. So like axe units that you can train up that are notable for the things that they contribute for a good portion of the game.
So not like, okay, okay, so here's a couple then for consideration. First one for earliest is Barst.
Yep. Okay.
Board and Cord both have different things going for them in the different games they're in, but Barst is just kind of always the best. Stat-wise, he's one of the best growth units in the game. He's only held back in 1 and 3 by being unable to promote and being locked to a bad weapon type.
Right.
But I mean, the Devil Axe is still the strongest weapon in that game. So,
yeah.
20 might. What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Other than that, I think we already have OC in here. Gonzalez. I don't necessarily think Wade, Lot, Bartray. Like we can argue Bartray for like the only thing that's super notable about him is that he's used to unlock his secret recruitment with Carla, but that's not necessarily defining of him being an axe unit.
Yeah, for sure.
The other one that I wanted to bring up for consideration is Ross.
Yeah, I had a feeling you'd want to talk about Ross.
And what does that mean as being the axe bro, but also the like pre-promote quote villager? If we're gonna throw archetypes around here.
He also kind of stands out, and I guess Barst can kind of do this too, but like the sort of, well, and I guess Gonzalez, like the water walking aspect of these like infantry axe units, because like these two can't do that. I don't think Hilda can do that. I don't know. I don't remember in Three Houses if that's even a thing.
Yeah,
But
so Barst can in 11 and 12 if you reclass him to Pirate.
yes.
But in 1 and 3, he can't. It's fun fact, Daros fact of the day, Daros is the only unit with true water walking in FE1. He is not a
Daros.
good unit because he has like effectively zero skill and effectively 10% speed growth, I want to say, or it's like the other way around. He's
Ooh.
terrible.
Sign
He's a
me up.
terrible unit. Yeah, no. The way growths in FE1 work are weird enough as it is, but his growths are so low. His most, I don't know, he has a bunch of weirdly notable factors about him that if I wasn't doing quizzes on my channel comments, I would totally just do, here's your Daros fact of the day. I might actually do that because I'm running out of quiz material. But yeah, so I think that of these two, Ross and Barst, and I'm trying to think if any of the others, like Vake, not really.
Nah.
I'm sorry, Vake fans.
Yeah, I wouldn't put him.
Arthur, his most notable thing is that he gets himself crit with his personal skill that gives him, -5 dodge.
I thought the most notable thing about Arthur was that he was a backpack.
It's a pretty decent backpack too. I'm trying to think if there's any other Axe units that are like immediate standouts that are good.
Lady Anna, just kidding.
We could talk about Nolan, actually.
We could talk about Nolan. I'd be down for that.
Because Nolan actually is kind of, in some ways, a much more important unit than a lot of these Axe units. In terms of where he is in the game.
Yeah,
the Dawn Brigade needs bulk. And Nolan doesn't have the best bulk, but he has enough.
He doesn't get two-shot, which is huge for the Dawn Brigade until Soth shows up. Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, Edward fans are gonna hate me for this, but he's awful. He's awful in hard mode. He is not your frontline unit until Soth shows up. It's Nolan every single time.
Yeah, the Dawn Brigade has the issue of all of its units are growth units with a lot of room to grow, and unfortunately that room to grow comes at the cost of bases.
Yeah.
And base levels. They have really low base levels and really pretty poor bases. And then you get Nolan, who has a decent base level and decent bases, and his growths are okay. He tends to get strength screwed far more often than you'd assume an Axe unit to be. But he's decently bulky. He's a warm body who can perfectly reasonably survive into Act 3, gets to promotion level pretty quickly, tier 1 to tier 2 promotion.
Right.
And just kind of is decent filler for your army, if nothing else, with low effort, which for the Dawn Brigade is somewhat notable because I think that most other units in the Dawn Brigade require effort to be put into them to really be worth their salt, worth the time. And Nolan is one of the few units that kind of works without that. He's obviously better with effort put into him, but
right.
I think that. I mean, so what's your justification for Hilda here? Let's talk a little bit.
I think Hilda can come off, like, be perfectly transparent. I just think she's funny. That's really it. I just like the character. I think she's funny.
That's fair. I know that a lot of people really love Hilda. They think that she's, like, an amazing unit, and I'm just gonna say I don't know Three Houses enough to say one way or the other. My Hilda was fine, but she wasn't, like, groundbreaking.
No, that's fair.
Didn't make me, like, double take and go, like, oh wow, this unit. It was like, okay, she's doing what I kind of expect her to do. I'm sure that there's some broken stuff you can do with her because that's Three Houses.
Yeah, that is Three Houses for sure. I mean, I remember her being, like, notably good, and part of why she stood out was, like I said in the other video, like, the duality of her gameplay and her personality. Mm-hmm. Just the fact that she presents herself as, like, oh, I'm not any good, like, don't expect me to frontline, and then she's, like, kind of a freak when she actually gets on the front line. just like the implementation of that was mainly why she's here. I just find that so interesting.
That's
But
fair.
I don't think she has like a super strong case for like the objective list. I will say that. Like I'm totally cool with her coming down. The thing with Nolan for me is like he is like kind of your second in command until you get like Jill, Zyark, and Taronio. And after that, it's like, yeah, he'll be like one of the people you deploy for sure, but like he is behind Taronio. I think he's definitely less deserving of investment compared to Jill, like by a noticeable margin. And Zyark needs no help at all for part 1. And even Volog, like I think consistently hangs better into part 3 than Nolan does. Oddly enough, I feel like the early levels that Nolan gets really make or break him. Because if you get like 2 or 3 levels on Nolan and he's not getting speed, that stacks up really bad. Because at base in chapter 4, I think it's chapter 4 where you first get Soth. It's the Laura Arrive chapter. At base speed, he can get doubled by like the first halberdiers in that room if they roll high on speed. So like that can already be very bad. He's still the best person to stand at that choke. You know, it's better than putting Edward there, but that's already really bad. And I feel like if you don't get like those good early levels, he really does not make a great impression a lot of the time. I don't find myself nowadays really bringing him farther than 1-7, because that's where you get like Tormod and Morim. And at that point, you have Morim, who's crazy, Soth, who's still crazy, Taronio for some chapters, Jill, Zyark, you get the Black Knight, you get Nyla, Raphael, and it's like Nolan is like really all of a sudden at the bottom of the food chain. So I'm not a super big Nolan fan. He is obviously like your best unit in like those early chapters, but I don't know that I would put him like as notable as some of these other guys, in my humble opinion.
That's fair. Meanwhile, as far as like Barst and Ross, it's like I love Ross. I love him honestly, but it also is he a great unit? Maybe. I don't know.
He's definitely very unique. I'll give him that.
Yeah, he's very unique in terms of being able to like become a pirate, in terms of being that like Ross is my favorite berserker in all of Fire Emblem. Just once you get him there, I've also been very blessed to have the vast majority of my Rosses just have good speed, which I know is not a guaranteed.
That's like typically his like one problem, if I recall what most people have said. I've never trained a trainee in FE8. They just, I'm not really into it. I know. I put out a poll earlier about it, and like most people love Ross. Things of
like, I know that they are not good, but I also have a soft spot for them.
Yeah,
not
fair.
Amelia. Not Amelia. I've never really like, but even with Amelia, I'll try. But in honesty, it's like, okay, Ewan definitely.
Yeah.
Ross definitely, and it's like,
okay,
I love Ross. Is he good? Maybe not, but he's interesting.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Barst, is he good? Yes.
Yes.
The answer is yes. The answer is, okay, FE1, you want to stock up on axes because Barst, even though axes are terrible and you can't buy any after chapter like 11 or 9 or something, so for like the second 2/3 of the game, you can't buy any weapons for him. He's still great. His growths carry him through. We can't promote.
Wow.
It doesn't matter. FE3, maybe a little bit less so in Book 1, and he's not present in Book 2.
Yeah,
but
didn't they take out the axe users in Book 2?
Yeah, Book 2, you have no axe units at all in FE3 Book 2. You get 2 silver axes, so they're basically just bouillons by any other name.
That's so
bouillons,
weird.
but they take a weapon slot instead of an item one.
What was Kaga doing?
hating on axes, which you continue to do until FE5.
Yeah, pretty much. FE4 is not kind to axes either.
Yeah, FE4 you get the Brave Axe, but even then it's like,
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah,
is it safe to pull Nolan down? Is that fair?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about him, but
yeah, for sure.
You make a decent case of like he's shaky enough.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, with the rest of your units, Ocean defines like here's how good an axe unit can be.
Yeah.
Gonzalez is here's how fun an axe unit can be. And while I said, my favorite berserker is Ross, I think my second favorite berserker, and a lot more people's favorite berserker, is
Gonzo the
Gonzalez.
Goat.
Yeah,
I love Gonzo. He's my favorite axe unit in Fire Emblem, like by far. It's just like he's a meme that is actually like good, but it's still a meme.
No, he's great,
and he balances that so well on top of just being like a very wholesome character. He's so funny, dude. I love him.
I'm genuinely looking forward to doing my draft run whenever I get around to it, because I have Gonzalez. I have all of like my favorite fun units to use in that game.
Yeah, no, I love your team.
We'll see if this army actually makes any sense.
Yeah, no, I love your team because you have Melody, Lou, Gonzo, Fear, and Karel. That's enough for me.
All 3 armors.
Yeah.
But no thieves.
Yeah, that's gonna be bad for Melody. They kind of screwed you on that. Not gonna lie.
No. I let him do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so beyond this, it's like, where do we put Boyd?
Why is everybody being so mean to Boyd?
He just got here. Yeah. And it's like, I love Boyd, I really do. I think it's like, hey, he's the axe bro that doesn't come with another bro. He's the axe solo.
Yeah.
And he's fine, and he works, and he picks up a hammer and can go to town, or you give that hammer to Titania and she runs away with it.
He is part of a triangle attack. That's something.
Or you're like me and Boyd levels up strength and speed
and
in
dies.
chapter 2 and dies on enemy phase because he suddenly one rounds things. The definition of suffering from success.
Oh, jeez.
It's so sad.
Right, I have a question for you about Boyd. So FE9 was your first Fire Emblem 2, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did Boyd set you up to be disappointed for a lot of the later like axe bros that you came to encounter in other games, or is that just me?
Probably. I played Path of Radiance when I was like 9 or 10.
Okay.
And then I played Sacred Stones when I was like 10 or 11. And I used Ross instead of Garcia, and I had a great time. And so my memories probably, set me up to be disappointed by axe units, because it's like, I remember using them, and they're great, and they're fun. And then I start, using, like, Dorcas in FE7, and he's like, it's fine? He was, Wade in FE6.
Oh, Wade.
He's painful, but I'd make do anyway, and it's like I love axes. I love axe units. I think over time I've come to just lances are like my favorite weapon type, but
interesting.
I love axes. I love the concept of it in general. Like it just because interesting and different, but it's like they definitely are ones where it's like, if these are your first experience with axe units, be prepared to be disappointed as you go backwards in the series.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard to say who else to put kind of in here, because it's like, I love Boyd. But do I call Boyd super notable? I don't know.
It's weird because, like, I agree with Barst. Ojan absolutely deserves to be here. He has everything that he needs just right off rip, and he stays good, and he's a staple of Thracia. He really is.
What else do you need?
Yeah, no, exactly.
Good stats.
Gonzalez, recruitable brigand, very funny, crit bonuses, all that good stuff. He has, like, the mountain and the water walking and stuff. Ross has that as well. Boyd, I feel like here is I mean, maybe besides Barst, but Boyd against like any of these three here is the least unique in terms of gameplay. Besides, triangle attack memes with his brothers, but...
So, I will say, though, and kind of like with Oswin, and kind of like with, like, Jagan, or Effie, a unit that kind of just does what he says he's gonna do and is good at it,
yeah,
for, like, a Mount Rushmore type thing, is still noteworthy.
Yeah.
Like, the platonic ideal of an axe fighter, I guess. And so it's like, in that respect, I think Boyd should be up here. It's like Boyd and Barst are both like the platonic ideal of the axe fighter, I guess.
Yeah.
And if we're going with that, then I guess do we knock Ross down? It's like I love my boy, but I can totally understand that it's like he is the mix of the axe fighter plus like the trainee villager.
Oh.
And do we want the mix? Do we think it's like the mix is interesting? Or do we think it's, hey, we'd rather have, kind of the outstanding in his field type?
Yeah. I mean, this is almost like the sort of conversation we started to have about the Jagans. Because it's like, yeah, like Ross is like the weird sort of unique twist of this, but he's not just like the axe fighter that comes in and is just like kind of good, like he does what you expect him to. So I mean, for me personally, it's easy between Ross and Boyd. I just like Boyd more, but I know you're a big Ross fan, and I know a lot of other people are also big Ross fans. So I'm trying to balance that a little bit. This is actually kind of hard.
I know, it is like, this is the hardest decision, I think. And so it's like, get in the comments.
Yeah.
Ross or Boyd, who would win in a fight? What?
Okay, I think Boyd would win in the fight, but
it depends on how much experience they have.
Yeah.
But also Path of Radiant stat caps.
Yeah.
The Radiant Dawn stat caps. Oof.
Oh, dude, I wish Boyd was better in Radiant Dawn. It hurt me back then, and it still hurts me now. Why does he have 18 speed, man, in part 3? Why?
He's, like, fine at best, and that's sad.
Yeah, it is really sad.
Yeah. Oh, well, I can't pick, honestly. This is the most, like, don't make me pick type thing.
Don't make him do it.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Don't make me pick my least favorite child of my 5, Not that I have 5 kids.
Yeah,
but like, the 5 axe fighters, don't make me pick my least favorite.
Oh, jeez. So, but let's get this out of the way. We do agree that these 3 are above these 2. Do we agree on that?
Yeah, I think we do.
Okay. Oh god, what do we do? Do we flip a coin or something?
Oh, like I said, I think we leave it in the comments.
All right, leave it in the comments.
Make a good case.
Yeah, make a good
Ross
case.
Or Boyd.
I'll put out a poll like a day after I post this video or something. We'll see what happens. We'll have the fans pull up.
Anyway, anything else you'd like to talk about before we get going? I know we've rambled on for at least the last 2 hours.
Yeah,
so.
we tend to do that when we talk Fire Emblem. Always a pleasure.
I'm totally fine with it. Yeah.
But yeah, I guess we'll close it out here. So thank you for watching. Mithril, as always, thank you for being here. It's nice to have your extra perspective on these types of things.
Anytime.
I'm starting to craft the categories for the next one. Because we mentioned Soth a little bit in the Jagan category. And Thieves is definitely going to be one of the ones we talk about. I think that can be interesting. But yeah, that's stuff for next time. Thanks for watching. Again, thanks for being here, Mithril. I'll have Mithril's channel in the description. As always, go check out his stuff. But yeah, anything else you want to promote here before I end it?
Not too much. If you you may have already seen it probably. But if you like discussing units in Tellius and why they are worse than you think they should be, I love all the mages in Tellius. I think their characters are great. I think that Tellius is just not kind to mages specifically, and
Yeah.
check that one out. That is the video that has by far gotten the most traction. Thank you for the people who've all like shared and tweeted it out. Yeah, if you like this level of like, hey, I'm gonna sit here and like dissect stuff in Fire Emblem, check out the channel.
Yeah, no, I loved that video. I definitely recommend it to the viewers. It's
Yeah.
very, I like videos that are very informational and concise. You know, that was a really good video.
I
So
try to make it concise, and then I show up on other people's channels and blast the video into 2+ hour territory. Like when I was on Danny's channel, and hey, we have we split this video up into 4 parts or whatever it
yeah.
was. Ugh.
Alrighty. Well, thanks again, everybody. Take care. Peace out. I'll see you next time.